Hi guys, in these next couple of videos I'm going to be talking about regeneration of rural areas to help you with this part of the spec, and I'm going to be starting with a short video about why areas need to be regenerated, why they've gone into decline. So in this part of the spec we talk about the post-production countryside, and that refers to the fact that rural areas no longer make most of their profit from things like farming, fishery, mining, etc. So they don't make their money. Predominantly, they don't make money anymore out of that because of the issues that we're going to talk about. So that is the meaning of post-production countryside. So why do these areas go into decline? Well, let's have a think about the post-production sections first of all. So the first one is farming. Obviously, now we import much of our farm produce from abroad because it's cheaper. We get a larger range, we can be eating bananas and avocados out of season, etc. So there's no longer the demand for those products in the UK. We still get a lot of products from the UK, but we get much of our production from abroad. Also, we have to remember that in the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years, we've had huge amounts of mechanisation. So that means that the farmer needs less people to do the work because machinery does it all. So even farms that are making money, they need a lot less staff, and often the staff that they need are seasonal because they need people to pick fruit, etc. So that's a reduction of for that. The second thing is that we've had a reduction in EU subsidies being part of the European Union. Farmers are no longer subsidised for growing crops, and in the past that's meant simply that if they keep producing they'll get a certain amount of money for their crops. It's very important for a country, as we can see at this time now that we are going through this pandemic, that we produce our own food, because it means we are not reliant on other countries to import food in case there was an issue with imports. For example, at the moment, we can produce food ourselves. So we know in the UK that if we need to, we might get the range that we're used to, but we can still provide people in the UK with food because we still produce. So EU subsidies are there to stop farmers going out of business, but they've got a lot limited since we've been in the European Union. And the amount of loans and grants that the government give people like dairy farmers is reduced as well. And that's due to the fact that we can get a lot of this stuff abroad, etc. And also EU rules. The next one is fishing. So fishery has declined as well, and that's again quite often down to EU quotas. So other foreign trawlers are allowed into our waters because we're EU, and we've got rights. They've got rights, I should say, to be in our waters. So there's an issue with the fishery in this country being a little bit in decline because of that, and also because of overfishing. So there's just not the same amount of fish in the sea because we've been catching too much. Next couple are similar: mining and quarrying. We used to, especially in the southwest, which will be one of our big case studies, Cornwall, tin and copper was mined, and this is obviously cheaper from abroad now, so that's gone into decline. Also mechanisation there as well. And quarrying, China clay in Cornwall as well. We get lots of that from Brazil now, it's cheaper, and obviously again more technology means less people are actually needed. So they are our reasons for the post-production countryside going into decline. Other reasons why rural areas are not doing too well is obviously due to rural isolation, which means that these areas are often inaccessible or difficult to access. So they have limited amounts of motorways, limited amounts of airports. So it's very hard to try and get businesses to actually invest in these areas because you're miles away from the core areas, from kind of London and the southeast and that kind of those global cores and those global hubs. So it's quite difficult. Tourism is another reason for decline. So tourism, you might be thinking, but there's lots of people go on holiday in Cornwall. There is, but if you think about tourism, it's often seasonal, it's part-time work, it's low pay and low skill. So that doesn't really help anybody really, because the jobs available are limited. And we've also got lots and lots of out migration from the young, the skilled, the educated, etc., will not want to stay there because there's not enough opportunities for them. So all of those, I don't think they're very tricky reasons, but they're all reasons why the rural areas have gone into decline. And the consequences of this, of course, are very similar to the consequences that we've looked at in urban areas as well. So we have the IMD, the index of multiple deprivation, will be very high. Certain indicators will be high or low, depending on what they are. So housing will be an issue. There's also the issue, obviously, with housing of holiday homes. So local people are often priced out of the market. Jobs are limited. Access to healthcare is limited because people have to travel and there's not as many hospitals. Housing, we just said, is of limited stock and pricey. Income is low. Average incomes are much lower than nationally. And we have lots of those indicators will be quite low for these rural areas. So they are the reasons why rural areas need to be regenerated, why they've gone into decline. And in the next couple of videos, we're going to be looking at the strategies, different strategies, and also what the implication or the success of those strategies are. Okay.